Good morning. It is Wednesday, April 22nd, and I'm here to walk you through yesterday, Tuesday, April 21st, first bell ringer activity. So this week, well, at least Tuesday through Friday, we're focusing on the introductory unit for human geography. Elements that deal with what's geography about, how do maps work, how do maps function. I've had several of you who've sent some really good questions in to via email, and I've tried to get those answers right back out to you. And if it's the stuff even on the AP Classroom multiple choice or FRQ, as long as you're not up against the Friday deadline, send me an email. I'll be more than happy to help you out. And remember that I check my email pretty regularly all the way up until about 2:30, and that 7:30 to 2:30, those are my office hours. Okay, your first question you had in your bell ringer is, what's the furthest distance you're willing and able to walk? The question's really meant to get you to start thinking about how we use space. In the US, we're the most mobile group of people in the world, so we've got access to all kinds of things like buses, airplanes, automobiles that extend our activity space. However, if you're in a developing country, you may not have as much access to personal transportation and be more limited to more public forms of transportation, or your personal transportation is a little more limited, like a bicycle, rather than, say, a car. And then when you get to the least developed countries in the world, your most common form of transportation is going to be your own 2 feet. And that greatly changes how far you would move in a single day. So really this question is about getting you to think about how much different your life would have to be if your movement was limited. Given where we currently are, all being quarantined, many of you are experiencing something similar to this in attempts to work from home. But please note, it's this new modern electronic communication that's allowing a lot of this to actually happen, as far as the distance learning, the parents or other family members or guardians that are working from home, your ability to not have to go in to the office or to the classroom. Now that's something that you want to be careful with as well. Never say things like, now that everyone has the internet, or now that everybody has a cell phone, because one of the things we're finding out from this pandemic is exactly how many people don't have access to those forms of communication. Whether we're talking about folks who live in rural areas where high-speed internet access isn't possible, or if we're talking about lower income families in urban areas, or people who they're not low income, they just happen to live in a section of the city where, the cell tower doesn't reach them real well. Or there's a windstorm and suddenly they don't have access to high-speed internet because the cable's out. So that assumption that we all universally have reached this high-tech era, it's not true. It's being experienced disproportionately by some people, not others. So back to our bell ringer question. Again, we're trying to get you to think about how things like where you would go to school, what sports teams you would play for, how likely it is that you would return back to your school for a play practice or some other school event if the school was farther away. So you start to understand why things like boarding schools used to be more common, especially for those people that were more wealthy and could afford them, where you could get more affluent students all together in one place to be taught, because perhaps people were more spread out. There weren't as many young people who were able to be educated, who had enough money to be educated, and so it made more sense for their families to send them someplace because of their limited ability to travel daily. There's a big difference between daily travel and ability to get from one place to the next. Yes, in Christopher Columbus's era, you could get across the oceans, but it took a long time to do so. Today we live in a world where most of the transportation that we think about is whether or not we're going to be able to get from home to school. What would your life be like to live only within a circular area within the distance, with this distance as a radius question? Again, just think about what it would be like to live in, work in, shop in, go to school in only one neighborhood or only one community. So the question's really getting you to think about other things other than just being an American in a Midwestern medium-sized city. Your transportation ability is what changes everything. So when you start seeing other questions as we prepare for the AP exam that talk about factors that would influence how people behave or the cultures they have, transportation becomes one of those items. Transportation becomes one of the items that tells you exactly how people would view work, how do they view community, what do they have access to. All right. So that's the review for your bell ringer. If you have any other questions about those or ideas that we didn't cover now, please send me an email. I'd be more than happy to get around to getting back to you today. I'm going to try to clear a little bit of a backlog. Outside of handling your FRQs, there's been quite a bit of stuff changing in how Walnut is going to function, how CPS is going to function from here on out. Also, you really need to be making sure that anything that you are receiving that gives you instructions about how to access materials for the AP exam, that you check those out and make sure that you can, in fact, gain access to AP Classroom, that you're figuring out all of the little quirks there, that you're registered for the AP exam, all those sorts of things. Most of the stuff you've taken care of, but we just want to make sure that everybody has the best chance to be successful on that test. All right, have a good Wednesday. Stay safe.